Happy Sabbath. Let me start my watch. There we go. Is this a full attendance today? It isn't? Did people know I was giving the sermon? Did some come early and then they heard I was giving the sermon and they left? So, well, I'm glad that you guys are tough enough to stick it out. How nice. I'm glad to be here with you. I've been at much larger congregations and much smaller. I pastored Boise, Idaho for 11 months, and I think we had less than 20 that were there, but they were precious. Everyone was precious. I've got the watch going. Well, I have a sermon pretty much based on what happened to Israel as they went out of Egypt. And so it's really fitting for this time. But they tried and they tested and they tried God over and over and over, and he was patient and he was patient and he was patient. And so I would like to look at some of his patience. Now, we know he didn't stay always patient. Just like most parents are patient with little tiny children. But after a while, when the little children just need it, mom and dad may just turn them over their knee. And God did that every now and then. He just turned Israel over the knee. But boy, he was so patient. And the title of this, if you like a title, you might choose a different one. Becoming like Jesus. Less anger, more patience. Now we know, I think you all know, that the one called God in the book of Exodus was Jesus, who was with them. It says in the New Testament that he's the one who was with them in the wilderness. And I want to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Now, that's obviously not the book of Exodus, but it talks about Israel going out of Egypt. And it's amazing, we think of God punishing, but the fact is, they were trying him. And it's just amazing the patience that Jesus had. So becoming like Jesus, less anger, more patience. Becoming like Jesus, less anger, more patience. You know, one of the problems with this podium, for me, it's just so easy to lean on it. See, not really supposed to do that, I guess. But boy, is it easy just to lean on it. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 through 13, talks about them coming out of Egypt. And he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1, "Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all our fathers were under the cloud. All passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea." So that pictured coming out of sin, coming out of this world, coming out of Egypt was coming out of this world and out of sin. And so they ended up getting baptized. Now we do the same thing. We have to come out of spiritual Egypt, and we have to repent of our sins, and we have to be baptized. And everything they did pictured our spiritual journey. The only trouble was after the baptism, they got in so much trouble, and they tried and tested Jesus over and over and over. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. All ate the same spiritual food. and all drank the same spiritual drink. Now, he's not talking about just the manna and such. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. He was the one who was there that they call God. Now, he's also called an angel, which means messenger. Jesus was a messenger. He's God's spokesman, has God's word. So you could call him an angel. Now, let me get that out of my mouth. I'll just read. You don't have to turn to these. I'll read them to you about Jesus. In the book of Exodus, chapter 32 and verse 34, because we're going to go back to 1 Corinthians. It says, "Now therefore go, lead the people to the place of which I have spoken to you. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit for punishment, I will visit punishment upon them for their sin." And then in Exodus 33, verse 2, it says, "And I will send my angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanite and the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite." And even though I didn't ask you to turn to those scriptures, if you did turn, you'll notice that the translators of the Bible, at least the New King James that I have, where it says, "I'll send my angel before you," they capitalize the A of angel. Now, they do that for Jesus, and they do that whenever it refers to God. They capitalize the G, or Lord, they capitalize the L. And here, the translators understood that was Jesus. So they capitalize the A in angel when he says, "My angel shall go before you. I will send my angel before you." Now, we're still in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And you know how easy it is for me to go from one to the other? I've got them all printed right here. So I didn't even bring my Bible up. This is my printed Bible today. Back to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Where after it says that spiritual rock that followed them, by the way, rock is, they have the R capitalized because it was about Jesus. But now verse 5, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 5. "But with most of them God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness." You'd think, well, God wasn't patient. Oh, when you go back, you see patience. They just tried him and tried him and tried him, stretched his patience. But their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now, these things became our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. And do not become idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. That's because they were eating and drinking before an idol, calf. They'd built a golden calf. And they were eating and drinking before a golden calf. They were idolaters. And God could have killed them all. Verse 8. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 8. "Nor let us commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell." Now you notice this was pushing God beyond the limit. He was not going to let them get away with sexual immorality in front of a golden calf. One day, 23,000 fell. Probably a lot more could have been killed. Now notice verse 9. "Nor let us tempt Christ. What a thought. Tempting Jesus. As some of them also tempted and were destroyed by serpents. How did they tempt Christ? How do we tempt Christ? They tempted Christ. We can tempt Christ. How did they do it? We'll get to it a little later. We'll continue here in 1 Corinthians 10. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 10. Nor complain, as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now, all of us have complained. And some of our complaints are very genuine. You know, some of the things they complained about were actual problems. They were having a problem. They were complaining. You'd say to yourself, well, if they were having a problem, of course they would complain. But wait, what should they have done instead of complain? I mean, with your children, they may complain, but you know, wouldn't it have been better to just go to mommy and daddy and ask for relief, whatever disagreement they have? You know, they complained, were destroyed by the destroyer. Verse 11, all these things happened to them as examples. And they were written for our admonition. All that we read about during the days of unleavened bread and them coming out of Egypt is for us to learn a lesson. You know that. You've kept enough days of unleavened bread, you know that. But we're reminding ourselves. They're written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. Verse 12. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Now, there's a warning. There's a days of unleavened bread warning that's coming up. Verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you except such as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. Wow, what a statement. Have you ever had a problem and you thought, well, God didn't make a way of escape out of that? Yeah, well, he did. It's just we didn't recognize it. We didn't think it was a good enough escape. The escape we want is to remove the problem, get rid of it, not go through it, not have patience to go through it. We don't want to go through it. That includes Fred Kellers. Someone asked me today, when would I keep my first Feast of Tabernacles? And let's see, it was 1959. Yes, I'm old. I've been tried many times, and I have succeeded and I have failed, like all of us. But we'll also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. Sometimes I've wondered, where is the way of escape? Like when I had hepatitis C. You know, I was sick, and I was so filled with fever that I went into the garage and for 10 days lay in the garage on a little pallet because it was just too hot in the house with my fever. And I finally picked myself up and went to Doc in the Box. And the doc in the box said, you've got hepatitis, but I don't know what kind. You need to go to a specialist, find out what kind. And I went to him, and they said, it's hepatitis C. And I looked up hepatitis C, It's the hepatitis you never get over. And it kills you after about 10 years. So I assume the doctor was correct. He was a specialist in hepatitis. God will make a way of escape. I figured Fred Kellers just wasn't ready for God's kingdom, so he said we're going to have to let him live and grow a little more. Well, becoming like Jesus. Less anger, more patience. Now, I'll just read a few verses to you. You don't have to turn. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Oh, have we all failed in that one? We've all let the sun go down on our wrath at one time or another. Well, maybe I'm judging by myself. Maybe that's unfair for you. I used to wonder about that verse. I'll read it again. Be angry and do not sin. What anger is okay and what anger is a sin? God gets angry, but he doesn't sin. We know that it's not wrong to become angry over sin or injustice. God becomes angry. Now, I'll just read, that was Ephesians 4. I'll just read this verse out of Ephesians 5. You don't have to turn. It's Ephesians 5, verse 5 and 6. Here are some of the things God gets angry about. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater. Coveting is idolatry. Has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. God does get angry. Fornication, uncleanness, covetousness, idolatry. Now, there are many examples of God getting angry in the scriptures, but pretty much he's usually very patient with sinners. I want to turn to James chapter 1 and read verse 19 and 20. This is instruction for us. James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. You don't have to turn there. You can listen to me read it if you want. See, I've got them all printed out. I don't even have to turn. It's much easier to go through this. Anyway, James chapter 1, verse 19 through 20. Therefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. That takes patience. Slow to speak. You listen, but you don't answer right away. You got to think it through. What should I say? Most of us have, in our lifetime, especially when we were young, didn't stop at all to think about what we were going to say, and we got ourselves in trouble with our mother, our father, our brother, our sister, the teacher, kid next door. Let every man be swift to hear, James 1. Slow to speak. That takes some patience. Slow to wrath. That takes patience. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Now notice it says the wrath of man. God has wrath, but his wrath is righteousness. The wrath of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God. Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. This is an example of Jesus having patience. Although he got angry, what did he do when he got angry? A lot of times in our lives, when we've gotten angry, it has brought pain and suffering. Anger in a marriage. And then angry words are said. And hurt feelings. So, Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Here's an example of Jesus getting angry, and we'll see what he did. Mark 3, verse 1, and he entered the synagogue again, and a man was there who had a withered hand. And they, who are they? Well, in the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 7, it says the scribes and Pharisees. So it says they watched him closely. It was the scribes and Pharisees, according to Luke 6, verse 7. Whether he would heal him on the Sabbath. They were against healing on the Sabbath. Boy, I think we're all for healing on the Sabbath. So that they might accuse him. Then he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Step forward." And he said to them, now here's the guy standing with a withered hand, and he turns to the scribes and Pharisees, and he said to them, quote, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill?" What did they answer? Nothing. They thought, we're not going to answer this. But they kept silent. Now that angered Jesus. And it says so. So when he had looked around at them with anger, Jesus is angry now, being grieved by the hardness of their hearts that they wouldn't even answer a simple question because they didn't want to see this man get healed of his withered hand on the Sabbath. They wouldn't even answer. He said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. Now, there are two groups here. There are two opposing that are going to have anger here. Then the Pharisees went out and immediately plotted with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. Okay, here are two angry sides. They went out, the Pharisees and such, and Herodians, were so angry they wanted to kill him. Jesus got angry. He could have easily called on God to destroy them. But instead, what he did was heal a man's. He got angry and healed. Now, if your anger causes you to do something really godly, because you're angry at the world or angry at the way Satan's world is, and you do something righteous and kind, then that's good. That's a good fruit of anger. God had anger, but he had good fruit from it. And they were so angry that they wanted to destroy. Wow. You know, this same happening was recorded by Luke. And I'll just read it to you. It's in Luke 6, verse 10 and 11. And looking around at them all, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he did so, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. But they were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they might do to him. Now see, remember Ephesians 4 verse 26 says, "Be angry and do not sin." Jesus was angry, he didn't sin. So some anger, if God is angry at something, it's probably okay for us to be angry too. But if God's not angry at it, we shouldn't be. I mean, it's easy to get angry at the guy who cuts you off in traffic or who tosses garbage out the window of his car right in front of your house or something like that. I don't know how angry God gets about that. Probably not. I mean, he doesn't believe in messing up his world. But I don't know that he reaches down and says, "I'm going to kill this guy." He tossed garbage out of his car in front of those church members' house or whatever. Or if he cuts you off in traffic because he's in a big hurry. It's easy on the highway to get angry. Most of the time, it's just somebody in a big hurry. Now, there are wrong fruits of anger. Suicide. There was a young man who attended church down in the Little Rock area, didn't live in Little Rock. And he lived out in the country. He had a porch. Something, I forget, set him off, and he was angry at his family. And he went out and he hung up a rope and he made a noose right on the front porch. And he climbed up on something and put a noose around his neck. And then he kicked out. They believe he thought that his parents, his family would see him, would maybe hear him, that they didn't. He died. He was angry. Angry with his family. Suicide can be a result of anger. Well, I'll show them. I'll show my wife. I'll show my husband. I'll show my parents. Murder. Lots of murders because of anger. I've heard of people on the highway. Maybe you have too. Somebody cuts somebody off and the other person pulls out a gun, begins shooting because they got cut off. Bitterness, slander, gossip, divorce. So far, Renee's just gotten over her anger at me and she hasn't threatened to divorce me yet. Wars over anger. Car wrecks from road rage. I've heard the one where somebody cut somebody off, the other one, when they got a chance, pulled up and just banged their car into the other car. Bam, bam. You know, hurt yourself in order to hurt the other person, that takes a lot of anger. You're hurting yourself just as much as you're hurting them. But you're so angry. Psalm 37, verses 8 through 11. Psalm 37. Yes. These days of unleavened bread teach us that God gets angry, but he doesn't sin. I mean, he let them go through mistake after mistake after mistake, and rebellion after rebellion. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Psalm 37, verse 8. Do not fret, it only causes harm. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, wait on the Lord. What do we call that? Patience. They shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, that's patience, waiting a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look diligently for his place, but it shall be no more. But the meek shall inherit the earth. I don't normally think of the meek as being quick to anger. The meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Well, in Numbers chapter 21 and verse 4 through 6. So here's, during the days of unleavened bread, we think about Israel in the wilderness. And here they are in the wilderness. God can only put up with so much because it's just not good for us for him to just put up with everything we might have over and over. So Numbers 21, verse 4 through 6, then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. Oh, what are we doing? He was feeding them. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in this wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our soul loathes this worthless bread. That was the manna. They had food, but now it's worthless. Just like a little child telling mommy, I don't like that. How often did we do that when we were little children? Mommy, I don't like that. I don't want that. I want ice cream. Our soul loathes this worthless bread. God took so much of that, and then he said, verse 6, so the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. And that should have caused everybody left to sort of say, I don't think I'm going to complain about this manna anymore. In Numbers 13, 12 went to spy out the land. They sent 12 spies. But 10 of the spies brought a bad report. And so, in Numbers 14, because they heard, well, this country's no good. We don't want to go there. So chapter 14, because they brought a bad report. So all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to them, oh, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Or like maybe you didn't say to your mom or dad when they wouldn't let you do something, I wish I were dead. People have said that. I wish I were dead. Not because I'm sick and in pain, but you won't let me do something. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, so that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. You know, I went through the book of Exodus, and to the best of my ability, this was their 10th rebellion. This was rebellion number 10. And later God says, you've rebelled against me these 10 times. And this is number 10. All the congregation said to stone them with stones. Now the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. Then down in Numbers chapter 14 and verse 22 and 23. Numbers chapter 14, 22 and 23. Because all these men who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test now these 10 times, and have not heeded my voice. Verse 23, they certainly shall not see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who rejected me see it. I want to go back and just look at some of their rebellion during the days of unleavened bread. It says 10 times. So I tried my best to figure out the 10 times. And Exodus chapter 14, verse 10 through 22. We already read 22. Exodus 14, go back to verse 10. This is when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes. Behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dwelt with us? To bring us up out of Egypt. Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still. That's saying, be patient. And see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. That is, no more alive. They actually did see them. They saw their bodies wash up on the shore, but they didn't see them alive. The Lord will fight for you, verse 14. And you shall hold your peace. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. But lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. Wonderful lessons from the days of unleavened bread. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. At least there'll be honor among those who are still alive. He didn't kill all the Egyptians. And the angel of God, notice the angel of God is capitalized. The people who translated and printed this believe this was Jesus. He was a messenger. Angel just meant messenger. Who went before the camp of Israel, led them out, the one who became Jesus, moved and went behind them. So Jesus, instead of being in front of them, went behind them to stop the Egyptians from killing them who were behind them. moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to the one, that is the Egyptians, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other all that night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land. Boy, you talk about a strong wind, just completely dry up that area. And the waters were divided. So the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on the dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Then in chapter 14, let's see what we got here time-wise. Maybe 10 minutes. May not even need it. Exodus 14:29 through 31. But the children of Israel had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. So the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel, now he said you'll see no more, but he meant alive. You won't see them alive. They saw the dead bodies. So the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Probably made them very happy to see them dead. Thus Israel saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt. So the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Didn't last long, but it worked for a little while. Sometimes we're about the same. God works something out for us, and then next trial comes, and we think, oh, God saved me out of this. Oh, how awful this has come upon me. How terrible this is. And we don't remember all the other times he delivered us. Well, it says they saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt, and so the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Now, chapter 15, they had the Song of Moses. So chapter 15, Exodus 15, verse 1, Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, and spoke, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Now, there are two of our hymns in our hymn book that are based on this. We have two hymns in our hymn book based on this. One is hymn number 88, and the other is 174. 88 says, I will sing unto the eternal. And then 174 is Moses' new song. So we get to enjoy the words anyway. We don't know what tune they had, and besides, they were singing in a language we wouldn't know. Well, they got to Exodus 15, verse 22 through 26. Exodus 15:22. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur. The Egyptians were gone. They were dead. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. They probably had water in skins, like canteens, but not metal canteens, but water skins. Found no water. Now they finally found some water. They came to Marah and could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called probably Marah. I haven't looked it up. And the people complained against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. When he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them, and said, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, even though he hadn't given them all of them yet, would, I will put none of the diseases on you which I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Now this was the second rebellion, by my count. This is the second time they rebelled. Then the third rebellion is in chapter 16. And I'm going to read verses 2 through 4, Exodus 16, 2 through 4. Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, "Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day." Here's an interesting statement. "That I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not." He's going to rain this bread. You can understand how they could rebel. They could go out on the seventh day and look for bread. He gave them enough on the sixth day for 2 days. But it didn't matter. They went out and looked anyway on the seventh day, some of them. So chapter 16, verse 6 through 8, then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, "At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord. For he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us?" I'm thinking that complaining against Moses and Aaron, who were just telling them what God wanted, was a complaint against God. Your complaints, he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us? You're not really complaining against us. You're complaining against God. And Moses said, "This shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints, which you make against him. But what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord." A lot of times we might complain about some leader in the church or some pastor, some elder, the home office. Well, your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. And I'm still checking the time. Fourth rebellion is Exodus 16, verse 19 through 20. And Moses said, "Let no one leave any of it till morning." Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses. But some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was angry with them. Fifth rebellion, Exodus 16, verse 25 through 28. Then Moses said, "Eat that today, for a day is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none." Now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found no one. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws?" And then verse 29. "See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place, and let no man go out of his place on the seventh day." So I will read to you Ecclesiastes chapter 7. This is the last verse I have for you. So we're just getting in here barely. Exodus 7, verse 8 and 9. "The end of a matter is better than its beginning, And patience is better than pride. Patience. Verse 9. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. None of you, of course. See you Passover, hopefully.